I used to believe competence was armor, that if you kept your head down, delivered results, mentored the younger ones who came in wearing their ambition like perfume, that you'd be safe, protected, valued. I was 45 when I learned how wrong I was. The conference room smelled like expensive coffee and leather chairs that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Marcus was seated at the head of the table, flanked by 2 HR representatives I'd never seen before. That should have been my first warning. The second was the way he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Vivienne, thanks for coming in." I'd worked for Marcus Chen for 7 years, built his digital marketing division from 3 people in a converted storage room to a 30-person team that brought in 40% of the company's revenue. I'd trained him, actually, when he was fresh out of business school with an MBA and no idea how to talk to clients without sounding like a textbook. "We're restructuring," he said, his fingers drumming against a manila folder. "The company needs to go in a younger, more dynamic direction." Younger, dynamic. Corporate speak for, "you're being erased." "I'm sorry, what?" "We're letting you go, effective immediately. Your severance package is generous, 6 months, full benefits. But we need you to sign today." I looked at the HR representatives, both women, both younger than me, both watching me with the same careful neutrality you'd use with something volatile. "Marcus, I just closed the elevation account. 12 million over 3 years. I brought in. And we appreciate everything you've done. But the landscape is changing. We need fresh perspectives. Digital natives. Digital natives." I built the framework they were still using, wrote the training manual that sat on every new hire's desk. But apparently, I wasn't native enough. "This is age discrimination," I said quietly. His jaw tightened. "This is a business decision. Sign the papers, Vivienne. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The thing about humiliation is how quickly it calcifies into something else. Something colder. I signed. Took my box of belongings, a jade plant I'd kept alive for 5 years, photographs of my team at last year's retreat, a coffee mug that said "World's Best Boss," that one of the junior designers had given me as a joke, and walked out through the open plan office while everyone pretended not to watch. My assistant Priya caught my eye. She was 28, brilliant, the kind of woman I'd fought to promote twice. She looked stricken. I smiled at her, the kind of smile you give someone at a funeral when you want them to know you're not going to break in public. I made it to my car before the first tear fell. That was 3 months ago. 3 months that felt like falling through ice. That moment of cold clarity where you realize the surface you were standing on was never solid at all. I spent the first 2 weeks in my apartment, ordering takeout and watching old films where women wore gloves and spoke in complete sentences. I cried more than I'd like to admit. Called my sister, who told me to lawyer up. Called my ex-husband, who reminded me why he was my ex by suggesting I take some time to relax. Relax, as if I'd been let go from a spa, not a career. But somewhere around week 3, something shifted. I stopped crying and started looking. I pulled up Marcus's digital footprint. Not out of revenge, not yet, just curiosity. Or maybe the same instinct that makes you check a wound to see if it's still bleeding. Chen Digital Solutions had been acquired 6 months ago by Meridian Holdings, a venture capital firm I recognized immediately. I'd pitched them once, years ago, on a partnership that Marcus had ultimately killed because he didn't want outside investors messing with the vision. Except now they owned him, and the acquisition paperwork was public record. I made myself tea, something grounding, Earl Grey with honey, and started reading. The terms were standard. Meridian took a 70% stake. Marcus stayed on as president, reporting to no one, apparently. The CEO position was listed as pending appointment. Pending. I sat back, feeling something sharp and bright unfold in my chest. The next morning, I put on the gray suit I'd worn to close the elevation deal. Did my makeup the way my mother taught me, precise, elegant, nothing that screamed effort. Drove downtown to Meridian's offices in a building made entirely of glass and steel that reflected the sky back at itself. The receptionist was young, effortlessly beautiful in that way 23-year-olds are when they haven't yet learned that beauty is currency that devalues. "I'm here to see Catherine Voss. Do you have an appointment? Tell her Vivienne Laurent is here about Chen Digital Solutions." She made the call. 2 minutes later, I was being escorted to the 40th floor. Catherine Voss was 52, silver-haired, the kind of woman who wore power like a second skin. I'd met her exactly once, at that pitch meeting Marcus had sabotaged. She'd remembered me, apparently, because she smiled when I walked in. "Vivienne, this is unexpected. I heard you're looking for a CEO for Chen Digital." She leaned back in her chair, studying me with the kind of attention that separates predators from prey. Marcus Chen is operationally competent, but he lacks strategic vision. We need someone who can scale, triple revenue in 18 months. Are you applying? I'm telling you, I can do it. You worked for Marcus. I built his company. He just put his name on it. Catherine's smile sharpened. He let you go 3 months ago, called you too old for the industry, from what I understand. So she'd done her homework. Of course she had. He did. And now you want his job. I met her eyes. I want to run the company I built. Whether that makes me vindictive or practical is up to you to decide. She laughed. A real laugh. Warm and genuine. I like you, Vivienne, but I need more than anger. I need a plan. Give me 1 week. You have 3 days. I spent 72 hours doing what I do best. Building strategy from skeleton to skin. I analyzed every account Chen Digital had won in the last 3 years. Identified the 12 I'd personally closed, worth $34 million combined. Cross-referenced them with the 16 accounts we'd lost in the 18 months since Marcus started pushing out senior staff. Found the pattern. We were hemorrhaging long-term clients who valued relationships over trends. I mapped out a restructure, not scorched earth, strategic pruning. Move Marcus to Chief Creative Officer, a title with prestige, but no operational control. Bring back 3 senior strategists Marcus had forced into early retirement. Rebuild the mentorship program he'd gutted to cut costs. Revenue projection, $48 million in year 1, $90 million in year 2. I delivered the presentation in Catherine's conference room on day 3. She listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. When can you start? Monday. Good. Because Marcus is expecting a new CEO Monday morning. He just doesn't know it's you. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling something that wasn't quite excitement and wasn't quite dread. It was colder than both. More certain, I thought about Marcus's face when he'd told me I was too old. The way he'd looked past me, as if I were already gone. I thought about Priya and the others I'd trained, wondering if they'd be next. I thought about every woman who'd been erased at 40, 50, 60, because someone decided their value had an expiration date. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it because someone had to. Monday morning arrived dressed in pale light and the smell of rain that hadn't fallen yet. I wore navy, structured, elegant, expensive. The kind of outfit that says I don't need to prove anything because I already have. My hair was pulled back simply, minimal jewelry, red lipstick but matte, nothing that could be called aggressive. I looked exactly like what I was, someone who'd been underestimated and learned to weaponize it. The elevator to Chen Digital's floor was familiar, same mirrored walls, same soft jazz playing overhead. But I felt different, taller, clearer, like someone who'd died and come back fluent in a language she'd only pretended to speak before. The doors opened. Priya was at her desk, my old assistant, now reassigned to Marcus's new hire, a 29-year-old named Brendan, who'd lasted 6 weeks before Marcus started complaining he wasn't strategic enough. She looked up. Her face went through about 5 emotions in 2 seconds. Vivienne? Hi, Priya. Is Marcus in his office? Yes, but he's meeting with the new CEO this morning. He's been preparing all weekend. I smiled. I know. Understanding dawned. Slowly, like watching someone solve a puzzle they didn't know they were part of. Oh my God, don't announce me. I want it to be a surprise. I walked through the open plan office, past cubicles I'd designed, whiteboards covered in strategies I'd taught them to build. A few people looked up. Recognition flickered. Confusion followed. Marcus's office was at the end, glass walls, view of the city. The kind of space you earn by taking credit for other people's work. He was standing by the window, wearing a suit that probably cost $3,000. His phone was in his hand. He looked nervous, I realized, trying to impress someone he thought had power over him. I knocked once and opened the door without waiting for permission. He turned. His expression was welcoming for exactly half a second, the corporate mask we all wear for strangers who might be important. Then recognition hit. His face didn't just pale, it drained, like watching color bleed out of fabric in fast forward. Vivienne. Hello, Marcus. He looked past me, searching for someone else. The real CEO, the person who was supposed to be here instead of the woman he'd discarded like outdated software. What are you doing here? I closed the door behind me. Took 3 steps into his office, his space, except it wasn't anymore, and set my bag down on the chair across from his desk. I'm your new CEO, effective today. The silence was exquisite. That's impossible. It's really not. Meridian Holdings owns 70% of this company. They hired me to scale operations and triple revenue in 18 months. I start today. You'll report directly to me. He was blinking rapidly, the way people do when their brain is trying to catch up to reality. You can't, Catherine would have told me. Catherine values results over ego. I delivered a growth strategy. You delivered excuses. She made her choice. Marcus's hand tightened around his phone. You did this because I let you go. This is revenge. This is business. I believe those were your exact words to me. I watched him struggle to recalibrate. He wanted to be angry. I could see it building behind his eyes, but anger required a power differential he no longer had. Instead, he tried control. Vivienne, look, I understand you were upset about the transition, but you have to understand the company needed to fire its most profitable strategist and replace her with someone who's lost 3 major accounts in 4 months. Yes, I read Brendan's performance reviews. Stellar decision-making, Marcus. His jaw tightened. This is unprofessional. What's unprofessional is age discrimination. What's unprofessional is forcing out senior staff to hire people you can manipulate more easily. What's unprofessional is building a company on someone else's work and then erasing them when they become inconvenient. I built this company. You put your name on it. There's a difference. He was breathing hard now, color returning to his face in splotches. So what, you're firing me? You're going to walk in here and destroy everything I've worked for? No, Marcus. I'm going to save it. I pulled a folder from my bag, hard copy because paper carries weight screens don't, and set it on his desk. Your new title is Chief Creative Officer. You'll focus on brand vision and client presentation. No operational oversight. No hiring or firing authority. You'll report weekly on creative direction and quarterly on brand positioning. This is a demotion. This is reality. You're good at selling ideas. You're terrible at building teams. So I'm putting you where you can do the least damage. And if I refuse, then Meridian will terminate your contract for cause non-performance. Losing 3 accounts worth $9 million combined counts as cause, in case you were wondering. I watched him absorb this, watched the moment he realized he'd been outmaneuvered, not with rage or chaos, but with paperwork and precision. Why? He asked finally, and for the first time, he sounded genuinely confused. Why go through all this? You could have just sued for wrongful termination, taken a settlement, moved on. I thought about that. About the easy revenge, the public accusation, the lawsuit, the settlement that would have bought me a year of comfortable unemployment while I figured things out. But that would have been his story, his narrative. Vivienne Laurent, bitter, vindictive, washed-up executive who couldn't handle rejection. This was mine. Because I don't need your apology, Marcus. I don't need your guilt or your regret or your belated understanding that you made a mistake. I need you to watch me build something you never could. I need you to see what you destroyed, thriving. That's not revenge. That's restoration. He stared at me for a long moment. You've changed, he said quietly. No. You just finally noticed I was there. I left his office without waiting for a response. Priya was hovering near the door, trying to look busy but clearly eavesdropping. When I emerged, she looked at me with something between awe and terror. Is it true? Are you really? I am. And you're coming with me. I need an executive assistant who actually knows how this company works. But I'm assigned to. Marcus doesn't need an assistant. He needs a handler. I'll find him someone who's better at managing egos than strategy. You're with me. Her smile was bright enough to light the entire floor. The rest of the day was a carefully orchestrated reveal. I called an all-hands meeting at 2. Stood in front of the team I'd built and introduced myself as their new CEO. Watched the spectrum of reactions. Shock, confusion, delight from the ones who'd watched me be erased, concern from the ones Marcus had hired. I know this is unexpected, I said, and I know some of you might be wondering what this means for your roles. Here's what I can promise. If you're good at your job, if you're here to build something real, you have nothing to worry about. If you're here because Marcus liked that you laughed at his jokes and didn't push back, we're going to have a conversation about performance metrics. Someone in the back, Jeremy, one of the junior designers, raised his hand. Are you firing people? I'm evaluating everyone, including myself. If I'm not the right person to lead this company, I'll step down. But I don't think that's going to happen. A few laughs. Good ones. The kind that break tension. I spent 7 years building this division. I know what works. I know what's broken. And I know that talent doesn't have an age limit, a gender requirement, or an expiration date. If you can deliver, you belong here. If you can't, we'll help you find somewhere you can. Questions. Silence. Then Priya started clapping. It spread slowly, then all at once, until the entire floor was applauding. Not because I'd promised them anything revolutionary, just because I'd told them the truth. That night, I went home to my quiet apartment with its jade plant and its half-empty closets and its view of the city lights reflecting off the river. I poured myself a glass of wine, put on Billie Holiday, sat on my balcony and watched the city breathe. I thought about Marcus, probably pacing his expensive condo, wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. I thought about Catherine, who'd taken a risk on a woman most people would have written off. I thought about Priya and the others, who'd stayed silent when I was forced out because speaking up would have cost them everything. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, relieved, free in a way I hadn't realized I'd been trapped. Revenge, I'd learned, wasn't about destruction. It was about reclamation. Taking back the narrative someone tried to write for you and rewriting it in your own hand. Marcus hadn't destroyed me by firing me. He'd freed me to become the version of myself I'd been too cautious to build, while I was busy protecting his career. The following months were exactly as brutal as I'd expected. I restructured the leadership team, bringing back 2 senior strategists Marcus had pushed out, both women over 50, both brilliant, both vengeful in that quiet way that makes for excellent business strategy. We rebuilt the client services model from scratch, implemented a mentorship program that paired senior staff with junior talent, creating pipelines instead of dead ends. Marcus lasted 6 weeks in his new role before he resigned. Took a position at a startup in San Francisco. We parted professionally, with a handshake and no eye contact. I didn't miss him. The accounts we'd lost came back slowly, then all at once. Once word spread that the company was under new leadership, the Elevation Group, the $12 million account I'd closed right before being fired, doubled their contract. Told me they'd only stayed because they'd hoped I'd come back. Revenue hit $43 million in month 11. We crossed $50 million by month 13. Catherine sent me a bottle of champagne with a note. Never doubt women who've been underestimated. They're the ones who know how to win. I keep it on my desk, unopened. A reminder. 1 year after I walked into Marcus's office and watched his face drain of color, I stood in that same space, now mine, redecorated with art I'd chosen and furniture that didn't scream compensation for insecurity, and looked out at the city. Priya knocked softly. The team's ready for the quarterly review. I'll be right there. She hesitated. Can I ask you something? Always. Was it worth it? Coming back, putting yourself through this. I considered that. I didn't come back for revenge, Priya. I came back because someone needed to prove that being fired doesn't mean being finished. That 45 isn't old. That women who've been erased can rewrite the story. Did you prove it? I smiled. Look around, she did. Took in the office, the team outside. The numbers on the screen showing growth that Marcus had thought impossible. Yeah, she said softly. You did. After she left, I stood at the window a moment longer. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, the one who'd cried in her car, who'd believed competence was armor, who'd trusted that loyalty would be rewarded. She'd been wrong about so many things, but she'd been right about one. She was good at her job. And sometimes that's enough. Not because it protects you, but because it gives you the tools to rebuild when someone tries to burn you down. I didn't destroy Marcus Chen. I just stopped letting him take credit for my fire. And that, I've learned, is the most elegant revenge of all, not needing it anymore. People say revenge changes you. They're wrong. It reveals you. The rest is just silence, stretching out like a room finally emptied of ghosts.